Welcome to Relate Higher, a podcast dedicated to providing the leading standard in conscious higher relating and to teaching you a conscious framework for all of your relationships. This is your go-to resource for developing meaningful, conscious relationships across your life. I'm your host, award-winning relationship coach and consultant and former family lawyer, Letitia Ringe. I'm so glad you're here. Welcome back to the podcast, everyone, and welcome to the season finale for our second series on the podcast, which has been all about creating and cultivating a conscious relationship with yourself. Now, when we use the word conscious, you can simply replace that word with great. Creating a conscious relationship with yourself is how you create a great relationship with yourself. And you want to create a great relationship with yourself because any kind of growth that you want to experience within any relationship in your life across your community is tied to your relationship with yourself. If you want to go deeper in a quality or an experience, you must first have a relationship with that particular quality or experience within yourself. If you're closed off from experiencing that experience or quality with another person, it means for sure you're closed off with experiencing that quality or experience with yourself too. So we want to start with our relationship with ourselves first because that is where all our power is. Almost always, in every single piece of advice you get from any expert within the relationship space, they are going to bring you back to focusing on your relationship with yourself. And that is why we have dedicated this second series on the podcast to talk all about how you actually create a great relationship with yourself. So in this episode, we're going to tie everything up in a really nice bow. I'm going to give you a great summary of what we've learned so far, and then we're going to talk about the impact of implementing everything that you've learned into your life and how that impacts your relationships and also your life at large. It's really important that you understand this so that you are motivated to actually go and do this work. And it will also be what shifts you from being confused, overwhelmed, or even just unmotivated when it comes to your relationship with yourself or working on your relationships. And instead, leaving this episode and then moving forward feeling clear, feeling confident, feeling empowered, and also motivated to go out and do the work that you're responsible for in your life and in your relationships. Whether you want to create change in your love life, in your friendships, in your relationships with family members, in your professional network, or just across your community at large, first and foremost, you must look at your relationship with yourself. Any person that I work with within my conscious relationship coaching program, we are always starting off here. It doesn't matter what area it is, and it also doesn't matter what phase of the relationship cycle you're in right now. For instance, if you're out there dating or attracting new people into your community or as a romantic partner, or if you're starting new relationships, or if you've been in relationships for a long time and you just want to learn how to nurture and improve them, or perhaps you're figuring out whether you need to remove some people from your life and bring them to a conscious completion with love, or you're healing after relationships have ended. Every single phase of the relationship cycle must begin first with looking at our relationship with ourselves. And so in this second series on the podcast, I've taken you through a series of episodes which cover everything that you need to look at when it comes to your relationship with yourself. Now, as you review everything you've learned in this series, you'll be able to identify which episodes are the episodes that you most need to work on. You will be able to say to yourself, hey, that's something I can see that I'm not really embodying or feeling clear on. And so you know that that is an area for you to look at. Any work that you do on yourself will only expand your capacity to experience deeper love, deeper intimacy, deeper connection across your relationships. This is such great news because it means the power is truly in your hands. You don't need to wait until you find the right people or finally the conscious people who have the capacity to be in the relationships that you really want to experience. Now, I also want you to know that most of the people who listen and watch this podcast are people who are already on the leading and cutting edge of relationship work. Many of you are therapists, are coaches, are people within the personal development industry, are people who are actively out there seeking education on self-improvement and on how to create the best relationships possible. So for most of you, you already have a pretty good standard in relationships. But the point is, it doesn't matter what that standard is for any of you. You will always be able to spot areas where you want to go deeper, where you want to grow, where you want to go higher, where you want to be more conscious. This is what evolution is all about, and it's just like in any area of your life. You are always on the journey and on the path of growing and evolving, and that's what this podcast and my work is all about. It's helping you, assisting you on that journey. So please don't think that you need to be ashamed because you're working on your relationships and on your life. That is what strength actually is, and that's what's going to set you up for creating a great life and great relationships over time. I also don't want you to think that it's a one and done thing. Like once I do this, I never work on my relationships again. It's the same as in your life. You will always need to be consciously tending to your life and your relationships, just like you would with that garden analogy that I love to use. We need to give the garden love and attention to know what it needs in this moment versus the next moment. And that's the same as your life. It's the same as your relationships, and it's the same as your own relationship to yourself. Now, just like with your life and just like with your relationships, everything comes back to your relationship with yourself because that's where all your power is. You only have control over yourself. You only have control over how you think, how you show up, how you feel. And so we always want to start with the power that we have. And then something really beautiful happens. You start attracting more experiences, opening up to more experiences, seeing where those opportunities for those experiences already are in your life because you start embodying and aligning with this energy. So you will start seeing changes in your life, changes in your relationships for the better as a result of this conscious relationship you're creating and cultivating with yourself. Now, in our Relate Higher framework for creating thriving, successful, satisfying, and deeply fulfilling relationships across your life, we teach how to enter into conscious relationship with others. Now, in order to do that, you have to have a conscious relationship with yourself. And that's why we've been teaching how to actually do that in this series. Now, I want to begin with a summary of what we've learned so far so that you remember all of the options you have to look at. And I want you, as we go through this summary, just to notice, that's an area that really needs my attention right now. Or notice where something you're deeply craving to be different or to deepen into within a relationship or just within your life generally. Notice where that desire might be linked to the particular area I'm talking about when it comes to your relationship with yourself. All right, so here's the summary of what we've learned so far in this series on the podcast about creating and cultivating a conscious relationship with yourself. Creating and cultivating a conscious relationship with yourself involves, first and foremost, creating a loving relationship with yourself. Now, in the episode on this topic, we went into self-love, unconditional self-love, self-awareness, and self-acceptance. It is so important that you understand how you operate as a human and who you are without all of the shoulds and expectations and filters we unconsciously and consciously put on ourselves to try and fit in and conform to expectations from society, which we then internalize and place upon ourselves. If you want to feel like you are loved and accepted in any relationship, in any area in your life, it comes down to you loving and accepting yourself. Because when you love and accept yourself, guess what happens? You go out in the world and you allow yourself to be seen as you are. No one in your life can love and accept you for who you are unless you allow them to see who you are. Most people, in big and small ways, dim who they are because deep down there is a fear that if they show themselves truly, then they will be rejected. But we reject ourselves ahead of time, trying to protect ourselves so that this doesn't happen. So then we move through life and all we're familiar with is rejecting ourselves. So the antidote to that and the answer to feeling seen and heard, to feeling loved and accepted, is beginning with loving and accepting yourself. You were designed intentionally. You have been created with all of your strengths, all of your weaknesses, all of the things that are easy for you, all of the things that are hard, and it's all a perfect combination. Own that within yourself and show up and allow people to see that. Allow people to see your messiness. Understand how you work and operate as a human, that you've got a mind, you've got a body, you've got a soul. There's 3 different voices within you, and sometimes it's really confusing because they're saying different things. The more you understand about the way you operate and accept the way you operate, accepting your humanity, the better other people are able to enjoy your humanity. And really, that's what everyone wants. We don't want perfect people with no mess around us because that's not human. And as we continue existing in our world as it is today, with the increase in AI, etc., humanity is going to become even more special and spectacular. So own your messiness. Own your strengths, own your weaknesses, own your contradictions, own your growth, own your evolution, and allow people to witness you along the way. You don't need to be like a robot and be perfect and never change, never have different opinions, always want to do the same things. That's just not what being human is about. So let's allow ourselves to be human so that we can actually enjoy our lives, have other people enjoy us in our lives as we are. And so we can also create an environment for other people where they get to be welcomed in as they are too. You cannot love and accept other people in a way that is truly meaningful, where it's not costing you something, until you first work on loving and accepting yourself. So that's the work. And in my episode on this topic, I tell you exactly how to do that. Secondly, creating and cultivating a conscious relationship, which is a great relationship with yourself, means also understanding and connecting with your full creative power as a human. This is all about your inner masculine and feminine energy. Now, there is so much conversation on this topic right now, and there is so much inaccurate education on this topic as well. Everybody is made up of masculine and feminine energy. It has nothing to do with your gender. It's not about femininity and masculinity. They are just different terms and people use them interchangeably, and that's just completely incorrect. You have masculine and feminine energy. Everything that's made up in the universe is made up of masculine and feminine energy. You are able to tap into these different kinds of energy as you need to create anything in your life. At different points in the creative process, you will need to draw upon your masculine energy in a particular flavor and sort of way, and your feminine energy in a particular flavor and sort of way. You want to learn how to interact with both and lean into the energy that's needed for the moment in your life as well as in your relationships. Now, in a romantic context, if you're interested in practicing romantic polarity with your partner, where you both become a team and one of you is able to hold the masculine energy and the other is able to hold the feminine energy, and then obviously you swap and change and you get to move through that fluidly as you like, This allows you to go even deeper into the energy that you're practicing because the other person is holding the other pole. Now, of course, you can also practice this within any kind of relationship, but the point is you're not going to be able to do this with another person, including a partner, unless you know how to tap into both energies within yourself. It requires you to experience them, get familiar with them. And so my episode on masculine and feminine energy gives you a really good introduction into this subject. Please know this is a lifelong experiential practice and work. So you can continue to learn more about masculine and feminine energy and how it's showing up within you and how to express it in healthy and beautiful ways that really enhance and ignite and activate your creative power, and how you can practice that within your relationships, especially within your romantic relationships. And what this topic is about is really getting you to operate in your full creative power. So if you want to show up more creative in your life in general, you want to be looking at your masculine and feminine energy. And our relationships are a creation, just like our relationship with ourselves. So what do you want to experience? No matter what it is you want to experience, you need to know how to be in that creative power. So you want to give some attention to understanding and learning more about your masculine and feminine energy. And this is one of my favorite topics to work on with all of my clients in my community. I've shared about masculine and feminine energy in relation to business, in relation to women and our hormones and the menstrual cycle, in relation to relationship dynamics, especially romantic relationships, in relation to life generally, creativity in general. It is such a powerful topic, and I'm so excited for you to continue deepening into it. Now, the third topic we covered to create and cultivate a conscious relationship with yourself is, of course, about designing a life that fulfills you. And you'll remember in this episode, we explored how we need to look at our life through a macro and micro lens. A macro lens is that high level lens where we're looking across our life at large, and we're looking at the 7 different areas of our life, and we're making sure that how we're living our life is intentionally designed to be a life that fulfills us. So we want to make sure we're looking at all the different areas, we're setting goals that are meaningful to us, and then we also want to zone in and look at the micro. We want to look at our day-to-day, our actual lifestyle, and we want to make sure that our lifestyle is aligned with our goals and the macro, and we want to make sure that our day-to-day, the lifestyle we're living, is actually also fulfilling on a day-to-day level, because if we get to these goals but the journey there is not fulfilling, we're missing the point, because it's truly the journey that matters, not the destination. And the final piece about designing a life that fulfills you is about being on purpose and evolving into your potential. You are a human. You exist in an ever-expanding universe. You will always be discovering new layers to yourself. And part of being you, which is ultimately your purpose, is about allowing yourself to reveal and become acquainted with those new layers. Self-discovery is part of your purpose and potential. It is normal to want to continue discovering new layers to yourself. You're not abandoning yourself because you explore these new layers. There's nothing wrong with you because you're changing and growing and evolving. This is normal. And so you want to set yourself up with an expectation in your life that you will always be growing. And the way that I'm teaching you to approach relationships will allow you to feel safe growing as a human without fearing growing apart from the people in your life. We'll talk more about that later on in this episode. Then we also spoke about understanding what you want and need within your relationships to thrive rather than survive, and why that is so incredibly important for you to understand, not only so you can obviously communicate and look for people who are a match for meeting those needs and desires, but also so that you can meet your needs and desires to the best degree that you can as yourself. Otherwise, we're just needing other people in our life to give us something that we need, and it gets really heavy, and then we outsource all of our power to other people. You want to know how to meet your own needs and desires, and in order to do that, you need to know what they are, and you need to feel confident in embracing those needs and desires, not seeing them as a weakness or something dirty or wrong, but something that is just neutral, and then learning to communicate from that place of neutrality. This is something I spend a lot of time working with my clients on, no matter what area of their relationship life we're working on, and also no matter what phase of the relationship cycle they're in right now. Learning to understand what your needs and desires are, learning to embrace them and just see them as neutral, and then learning how to communicate that with the people in their life in a neutral way is a superpower, which changes your experiences of relationships. You also learned that creating and cultivating a conscious relationship with yourself is also about understanding your relationship history. This includes your perceptions of past experiences of relationships. It includes your protective patterns, your unmet childhood needs, your triggers, your attachment styles. It also includes understanding the patterns you have within your mind and mindset and your body and nervous system, and understanding how these show up in the present in your current relationships. You need to be aware of your relationship history so that as you're operating from relationship history from the past, rather than to the person in front of you in the moment in front of you right now, you get to consciously shift into presence, which allows you to see the person in front of you. It allows you to see yourself. It allows you to meet the moment as best as you can and lead it and guide it and give it what it needs, rather than constantly recycling a perception of the past that's usually coming from a place of fear. It's usually aligned with what you don't want to experience. It's usually limiting you based on the past and what was familiar, rather than allowing you to expand. So the more aware you are of your relationship history and how you unconsciously go into old history, past protective mode in your relationships now, the better you're able to spot it as it happens. You can take responsibility. There I go again, operating unconsciously from the past. That's cool. I'm aware of it. I forgive myself because this is just something we do as humans. And now I'm going to consciously shift back into presence, back into meeting myself, back into meeting you, back into meeting this relationship. And from this place, this is where all the magic happens in relationships. It's where depth is. It's where meaning is. It's where intimacy, true connection, true love actually is. All your power is in the present moment. To be in the present moment, you have to be present. And that's what being conscious is all about. And finally, creating and cultivating a conscious relationship with yourself is also about understanding what the work looks like on your end in your relationships so that you can create the great relationships you truly desire. Now, I told you about the mindset you need in order to show up and feel empowered and clear and take responsibility for that work so that you're actually doing the things you need to do in order to create the great relationships you want, and so you're never dependent on anyone else again. So you set yourself free from this horrible pattern and cycle that almost everyone is in, where we outsource our power to other people, constantly being on the search. Are we in relationship with the right people or not? And is this relationship still right? Because I'm afraid that it won't be, because I'm into growth. And so that means at some point we're going to grow apart. And then I'm going to be left alone. I'm going to be possibly abandoned. Or this person's going to hold back my growth. When you approach your relationships consciously, and it's built on a foundation of a conscious relationship with yourself, when you're actively doing the work to be in conscious relationship with yourself and others, you will set yourself free from looking for the right people for your answers. All of the power is within you. It's within doing the conscious work that's within your power that is focused on you rather than being focused on anyone else. It means in the much rarer occasion that a relationship does need to end, it will be done in a conscious, very clear and obvious and loving way rather than the way most people experience relationship completions, which is just pretending that they don't happen and then quietly grieving for a very long time, or it being an incredibly painful process. And when you're the person who first has the awareness of this, what many people do is come up with reasons on why this relationship is just horrible so that they can actually end the relationship rather than just loving on the relationship for what it was and then lovingly releasing it and lovingly also leaving it open for that relationship to evolve into a closer relationship again in the future if it ought to be. We don't need to blow up our relationships. We can keep them open while still having clear completions and closures for this moment in our life. And it just becomes a more fluid and natural thing, something done with love and something that you're not unconsciously fearing and then therefore unable to really sink yourself into your relationships to the depth and the openness that you're secretly yearning for and deeply desiring across your relationships. Okay, so when we implement all of these topics that we've covered in this series on the podcast, it means that generally, you will be loving and accepting yourself. You will be living a fulfilling life. You will be in your full creative power and potential. You will understand clearly what you need and desire in relationships and feel neutral about those needs and desires. You will be meeting your needs and desires and coming from a place where you're full up in your relationships, neutrally communicating what you need and desire, and also allowing yourself to be supported by an ecosystem and a community of people rather than trying to find a few people to meet all your relationship needs and desires or even just the one. Instead, you're supported. So as people go in and out and you grow and evolve and there's differences in, once upon a time I enjoyed meeting this need or I had this need and now I don't, it allows for people to be people and to change and evolve and grow and for you to still be supported in the process. It allows you to clearly see when you're operating from your relationship history rather than operating in the present moment with the person in front of you, truly seeing yourself, truly seeing the other person, truly seeing your relationship, and then therefore being in a position to tend to what that relationship needs right now. It also allows you to feel clear, empowered, and responsible, knowing what the work is in your relationships rather than feeling confused and overwhelmed or just completely unmotivated because you don't know what you should be doing anyway. Operating in this way means no more hiding yourself in your life and your relationships. It means no more seeking validation from people outside of you. Instead, you're simply sharing your fulfilled, loving, amazing personhood and life with other people. It means no more outsourcing responsibility and your relationship satisfaction to others. It means no more being worried about growing apart and then therefore you either being hyper vigilant about the people in your life and how close they are to you or not, and whether you need to have the next person lined up to replace them, or on the other end, being so closed off to people that you push them away and really control your environment, keep as many people out of your environment as possible because you're worried about the instability and chaos that other people might cause in your life. It also means no more being stuck in old protective patterns that have you blowing up or ruining your relationships or just causing misery for you and the people you're relating with. It means no more approaching dating from an unconscious space where you don't love and accept yourself, where you take scraps that people give you instead of being in your power, knowing what you want to create, knowing what you're sharing with another person, and then being in a relationship with a person and saying yes to a person who actually meets that. It means as you move through healing from relationship completions, you don't see yourself as a failure. You don't beat yourself up. You allow yourself to tend to yourself and make the most of that time and learn from the experiences and then set yourself up to thrive in your next relationship. relationships. It means, again, if you are completing a relationship, doing it with love rather than having to beat up on the other person or yourself in order to have that relationship naturally end. It also means starting new relationships with intentions, knowing what you're creating with that other person. It means improving and nurturing your relationships being something that you're always available for because you understand that that is what creates great relationships. It also means if you are ever deciding whether to leave or stay in a relationship, it can be done in a way that is open and loving, where you're not ruining your life or the other person's life in the process, and you get to really allow yourself to consciously meet that phase of the relationship cycle and allow it to evolve in a way that is loving and respectful of you and the other person in that relationship. You use that decision-making process to either deepen your relationship with the other person and improve it and nurture it, or to consciously bring that relationship and its current iteration to a close. Relationships get to be a positive experience no matter what phase of the relationship cycle we're in. I know that this is a totally different way of looking at relationships, but it's honestly what almost every human being is actually craving. No more operating from fear in our relationships and having that drive the terrible decisions we make and the way we blow up our lives and our relationships with others in the process. Let's show up with love no matter how relationships change and evolve, and let's respect ourselves and each other along the way. And it all starts with respecting your life and your personhood, and that's what you've learned in this series. So here is the state that you will step into through implementing all of what you've learned in this second series of the podcast. You will show up feeling whole rather than ashamed. You will show up feeling magnetic rather than dimming your light. You will show up feeling fulfilled in your life rather than showing up feeling drained, like something is missing. You will show up feeling present rather than scattered in your relationships and your life. And you'll also show up being and feeling ready rather than unavailable. Now, the sentence I want to leave you all with, to take home, to remember everything that you've learned in this episode and to start creating and cultivating this conscious relationship with yourself, is as follows. Creating a great relationship with myself allows me to create great relationships with others. This is where all of your work begins, no matter what you're seeking to improve in your relationships. And remember, you are on the cutting edge and the leading edge by doing this work. So don't feel ashamed that you're here. It's a smart decision, and we are so grateful that you're here. Now, if you want my assistance on your relationship journey, regardless of what phase of the relationship cycle you're in right now, regardless of what area of your relationship life you're looking at, we will always be looking at your relationship with yourself and then supporting you with that relationship or the particular phase of the relationship you're in. So I work with people who are dating, I work with people who are in relationship, I work with people who are working on their relationship by themselves, I work on couples who are working on their relationship together. I work with people who are deciding whether to end relationships. I work with people who are completing relationships. I work with people who are healing their heart after a relationship has come to an end. I work with people who are starting a new relationship or about to get married or have children, and they want to make sure they show up in a really intentional way. I also support people not only in romantic relationships, but also in improving relationships with family and friends and the community at large, as well as professionally in their business or working in a business, managing a team, being a part of a team. All of it comes down to not only relationship skills, being in conscious relationship, learning conscious relationship skills, which is what I teach, but also creating and cultivating that conscious relationship with yourself. So if you want a personal program designed for you to meet your personal circumstances and to support you improving your relationship as well as your life as a whole, I invite you to apply for my Conscious Relationship Coaching Program. You can head to relatehigher.com/CRCP. There you'll find the button to make your application, and then once I receive your application, I'll send you all of the details as is relevant to what you share in your application. Now, for those of you who are not already a part of my newsletter list, I want to make sure that you're receiving my weekly relationship newsletter. I share information there that I don't share anywhere else. You get value-packed email once per week, and all you need to do is head to relatehigher.com/community. There, I'm also sending podcast updates so you'll know when podcasts are released, and whenever I have a new course or program for you, which deep dives into one of the areas that we cover on this podcast, you will be the first to hear about it. And finally, if you haven't yet downloaded my free community resource called Create Thriving Relationships Today, I highly recommend you do that now. This is how you find out personally what your work is in relationships. And you can download that at relatehigher.com/masterclass. Okay, my friends, I mentioned that this is the season finale for Series 2 on the podcast. We're now moving into Series 3, and this is going to be lots of different series, actually, where we deep dive into specific relationship areas and specific phases of those relationship areas. The first area we're going to focus on is romantic relationships, which is my most favorite area to focus on because I just love, and I really believe that the way we treat our romantic partners and our romantic life has a huge impact on all of our other relationships. So we'll be deep diving into romantic relationships and into specific phases of the romantic relationship cycle. So we'll look at dating, we'll look at healing from a relationship completion, completing relationships consciously, starting new relationships, deciding whether to leave relationships, and of course improving and nurturing an existing relationship. Now, we'll be taking the next week off from the podcast, so you won't see any new episodes, but then we'll be back the following week with our new series. I look forward to seeing you there. Bye for now. Thank you for listening to Relate Higher, your go-to resource for learning how to consciously approach all of your relationships. To deepen your learning and practice, make sure you're subscribed to receive the Relate Higher community newsletter. This is a weekly newsletter sent to you every Monday, providing further coaching and education to support your relationships. Subscribe at relatehigher.com/community. And if you haven't yet left a 5-star review for the podcast, we ask that you please do that now so that this podcast can reach other listeners who also want to learn and practice conscious higher relating. Because remember, the more people who learn, the better relationships we all enjoy.